Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Lots of games last night in the NHL. A couple things going on in Vancouver that are curious. Quinn Hughes sort of talking about the Vancouver medical staff mishandling things. We'll talk about that and a number of other things on the show. But as always, we start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, first thing, I'm going to hawk my Sportsology newsletter. Go to sportsology.com. Type in newsletter up top, or just go to it's down on the lower right side of the page after you do that. And this way you can sign up. It's free. I've got draft info in there and take advantage. Anyhow, let's talk about Tom Brady. So when he plays the Dallas Cowboys, he will be a home underdog for the first time in his career. And I don't think they're going to beat the Dallas Cowboys. I don't care if Tom Brady's playing. I think the Cowboys defense is too good. And I think that's Dak Prescott, while he's not been great lately, really doesn't have to overdo it against Tampa. I think Tampa's offense is mediocre at best. It's getting a little better lately, but I don't think they're going to win.
Cap, there's no reason to express any kind of confidence in Tampa Bay because they've been, other than like fourth quarter comebacks that Brady has had against Carolina or other teams, they've really been pathetic this year. They've had injuries on their offensive line. But I you know what? I just can't, until it's like the philosophy I have with a lot of things. I'll believe that he gets beat when I see him get beat. Until then, it's Tom Brady. I think he'll pull through.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with you, Mike. They really haven't done anything to warrant to be considered among the top teams. But, you can never discount Brady, just like with the Lightning, until, all those guys are retired. I will feel the same way about the Lightning. They're always, there, always with some ability to come back. But, it's interesting that Russ started this pre-show with discussion about the betting line and everything, because I've been reading people that are getting weary of all the betting talk. But
yes,
the thing about it is, like I'm not a bettor at all. I don't bet. Yeah, but I do like the betting for this information. It really feeds into the reality of sports. Like and I always kid Russ about it, but it's true. In sports, people talk as if they have some kind of idea of what's really going to happen. That's what, they talk, as I say, in declarative sentences. They don't say, I hope that team will win. They go, oh, my team is going to win. I mean, they've got this and they got that and all that. But it never works that way. And the betting probabilities have at least opened up some eyes with the idea of, you see it all the time. When the score changes, the probability of them winning changes as well. Well, that's reality. That's what really happens over the course of time. Like if you have a 14-point lead with, 24 minutes to go, your chances of winning are, whatever it is, 60%, 70%. And I think it really has been beneficial for people to kind of have those kinds of things. Or as Russ just pointed out, that Tom Brady has never gone into a game where he's been the underdog. Like
that's the only reason I would mention.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to believe a guy who's been around 20-something years. Like this is the first time. It's
right. Well, even the parlay bets and everything, I think are educational and everything, because you sort of understand where the cutoff between having a good game and not a good game is, they have these, I see the prop bets where, if, some running back, I'll just use the Lions since I'm familiar with, if Jamal Williams gets 64 yards and St. Brown catches 6 passes, you can kind of win your bet.
Well, I'll talk about one. I was in Atlantic City a few days ago, and one that a guy that I know, what he was betting was with Derrick Henry in the Titans game on last Sunday. And the betting line was, hey, 22.5 carries. He went over on that. That was easy. That's an easy one. But the other part was over 92.5 yards. And what was interesting about that is he had 70 at halftime, but then the game started to change. And in the fourth quarter, he still only had about 80 yards. And there was a third down play with about 5 minutes to go or so, and the Titans were changing the way they were doing the offense, and they made a third down conversion on a pass Then Henry went in and carried about 7 more yards, got 1 more carry. He went over that mark. But if those things didn't happen, he might have lost. He might have lost that bet just because of the way the game was. And that's how close these guys have it figured out. That is the margin of losing and winning when you're putting money down.
No, Russ, did you say with Brady? Did you say home underdog or just
home underdog?
Okay, because they were a big underdog in that first Super Bowl against the Rams. They were
right. They weren't home.
They were minus 14. But I'll just say this.
I didn't try and ruin my stat.
No. Because that popped to mind, and I'm like,
yeah.
But no, you look at the games this week, and I want to make a point about the whole betting thing as well. But you look at the games this week. You got 2 games, and I will never feel safe until the game is over with. But unless something dramatically goes wrong, Cincinnati should beat Baltimore pretty easily, and with Lamar Jackson not in there. And I would suspect the Bills would beat the Dolphins, but you never know. But those look like really like 2 dog games, and in Jacksonville and the Chargers, that'll be close, but it doesn't. The most exciting game might be Dallas-Tampa.
It's going to be one of the better ones for sure.
I mean, Minnesota and the Giants. I mean, that doesn't really.
You know what? I think that's an exciting game. I'm going to go on record and say something here too.
Okay.
A lot of us Jet fans, if the Jets are out of it, we'll root for the Giants. I have nothing against the Giants. Have never had anything against them. So, and I've always kind of liked Daniel Jones because I always felt like there's something there, but he just used to always get maligned. He would do things that would just lose games, but this year he hasn't. This year, he's actually got more confidence, and he's kind of dangerous. Dangerous to the point that last Sunday, the Eagles media on a couple stations, like I talked about, didn't want Daniel Jones in the game so it wouldn't ruin their potential home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So the thing is, if the Giants can beat the Vikings, which I think they can, I think the Vikings for that record are not a great team, then they would face the Eagles, I think. And I got to tell you, I don't think the Eagles want to face the Giants because the one thing the Giants did to the Eagles was they blitzed the quarterback often. And the thing is, Jalen Hurts is hurting with his shoulder. And if he can't run, it takes away a facet of his game that, kind of evens things out a bit.
And he's not even the same quarterback when he can't run. Because it changes his passing as well. His running sets up his passing.
And the Giants are the worst kind of competition for the Eagles because Saquon Barkley can run the ball, they can control the ball. Daniel Jones does the run pass option really well, so they can win the time possession game. If they go 35, 36, 37 minutes and hold on to the ball, that's less of a chance for.
You got to get past Minnesota first. So we'll say,
exactly.
That's an interesting game to me.
But I'll just far be it from me, Kev, to be annoyed at things. But watching football games and even watching hockey games on ESPN or on TNT or in Canada on Hockey Night in Canada, it's really oppressive how much of the DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM stuff is on. Even like on the Hockey Night in Canada has a segment before the game and in the first period that used to where Coach's Corner used to be, where this guy Cabby, who I don't really know, but he seems like a nice enough guy, but he's giving the odds in game of stuff. I mean, really, it's just like it's ponderous. I mean, I know there are probably people who are interested in it, but Jesus,
it's not even that. I mean, it's the money of it all. Like I just tune that stuff out. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I just don't even pay any attention to it. And but I do like the probability. I mean, you actually made my point about, and I've always said this for years. Like I've always understood that there's always a chance that something that you don't expect is going to happen. That's why when I was early in my career, I would always talk, even though I would make a pick, I would always say, if they played 10 times, because I like to suggest probability. I would say if they played this series 10 times. One team would win twice and the other would win 8. Because that's really what happens in the real world. And, if you want to know actually what the odds of something strange happening like your Buffalo Bills, I mean, they're out there now. Like there is a probability out there, and it's based on simply what has occurred through the years in those situations. And, it's a legitimate number in my opinion. It'll tell you that there's a 12% chance that Buffalo would lose, or a 9% chance. So you really have a better understanding. That's what the betting world has given us, just sort of a better understanding of how the real world works, and not the way we think it does as fans.
And I'll give a couple of shout out rest in pieces to Jeff Beck and Lisa Marie Presley.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Young, very young. So.
54 years old. I mean, talk about tragedy in that family. And the funny thing was, I'm pretty sure her mother and her were at the Golden Globes earlier in the week, because
she did an Elvis thing at Graceland.
The movie Elvis, the actor won for Best Actor, and I guess they were part of. I don't know if it was the premiere or if it was the Golden Globes, but I know that they were part of a. They weren't active as part of the movie, but they were involved after the fact. And I saw something with the guy who the actor Austin Butler, who played Elvis, and saying how he was appreciative of all the support that the Presley family gave them. And then in the next moment, I hear that she died, and it was cardiac arrest, and I believe Elvis died. I mean, we know that he had drug issues and there was an overweight situation, but I believe he died of a cardiac arrest when he did die in 1977. I believe.
I think so, but
I'm pretty sure. So
I want to repeat what I said the other day. You sure packed a lot of watching into that 2 minutes that you saw the Golden Globe.
No. I saw that after the fact. I saw that
incredible thing.
I saw all the key moments in that.
I watched 2 minutes of it, and he's now spent 17 minutes talking about what he saw in the Golden Globe.
By the way, when we do start the show, Mike, I have a rant on the referees.
I want to talk about the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah. Okay, let's start. I'll talk about Jeff Beck some other time. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 13th. Friday the 13th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I haven't stepped under a ladder or stepped on a crack.
Kevin Allen, superstitious. I am.
Where's that mirror? I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And the top story from last night has to be that the Seattle Kraken, the second-year Seattle Kraken, hand the Boston Bruins their first regulation loss at TD Garden. They had lost in a shootout. I believe Vegas and LA were the teams that beat them in the shootout, but Seattle shuts out the Bruins. I think it was 4-0. 3-0. So, I mean, Kev, they've won 7 in a row, the Kraken, and they're just really clipping along.
It's really, really impressive. And two statistics I want to throw out there, which kind of sums up where the Kraken are. Number one is just a simple one, is they're third in scoring. A second-year team. They did not draft particularly well, I didn't think, in the expansion draft. But somehow they've created now a team that is the third highest scoring team in the NHL. And that's really remarkable. That they've been able to do that, particularly given, their start. I mean, they do very well. But here's the one that stunned me, that sort of sums up who they are and maybe speaks to the idea of them being a really good overall team. I think Eck talked about that recently, about how he thought it was similar to Vegas's first year, their second year, in terms of their team. And actually, Eberle spoke to that after the game last night, where he said that the camaraderie on this team is pretty special. But they're on a 7-game road trip, and the last time a team in the NHL won 6 consecutive road games to start a road trip was 8 years ago. Like 8 years ago, that's how long it's been since a team they've started this road trip 6-0. And nobody's done that since the Sharks did it in 2015, which is really an impressive feat, and I think speaks to how unique this Seattle team is.
Yeah, I mean, somebody
mentioned this already, but that the fact that they beat the only other undefeated team in 2023, they're now. Last night, the two teams that hadn't lost yet in the new year played against each other, and to win that, to beat that game, win that game.
Well, Russ, the thing about Seattle that I give Ron Francis a lot of credit. We were critical of their original expansion draft, but he has been able to, like, here or there, find these like Tolvanen He picks him up
Erik
off the
Karlsson.
waivers from Nashville. Now he's got 4 goals in 7 games.
Yep.
They put him in a position to succeed. Guys like Daniel Sprung. They've been able to pick and choose these guys and find the right guys to plug in the right places, and it's worked.
Yeah, there's no question. For another outlet that I wrote for, they wanted like mid-season awards. Where do people stand? And Dave Hackstall's like number 5 on my Jack Adams. Like he's creeping his way up there.
I think he's going to win it.
He could. He could.
He should if this keeps going. Obviously, he should.
I can't see how Montgomery doesn't win it with the way the Bruins have.
Well, that's the thing. I have Montgomery number 1 at the moment.
Yeah, but the Bruins, he inherited a good team already.
Right, but we all thought that they were in decline, and maybe that was
but I mean, maybe he will win it, but I don't know. I mean, traditionally, the broadcasters look at where teams were to where they are now. And the point differential of Seattle is, just significant. So,
yeah,
that's my take.
The only thing the chat room asks, what do we think about Poyle's comment about Tolvanen now? I think the comment about Tolvanen, David Poyle did not give a vote of confidence to his staff. And he also said, I could have screwed up too. And it does look like they've screwed up. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, they definitely have. I mean, it's one of those things, though. I mean, I shouldn't say they definitely have, because the reality is they did give it a lot of different tries in Nashville with him. They did.
But they had a lot of different coaches. See, that's and maybe this is the right coach. It's true. But again, he waived him. Like, if he would have traded the asset, nobody would say boo. Like, if they'd have gotten even a 6th-round pick, nobody would say boo, but he didn't. He gave
it kind of reminds me of William Karlsson a little bit with Vegas. William Karlsson with Vegas kind of reminds me of him a little bit. Like everybody knew he was talented, but he was never really quite as talented as as they wanted him to be.
Yeah, but he didn't go away for nothing. Like that was expansion draft.
It was expansion draft, so it was nothing. But
yeah.
I mean, we can't say that they didn't give him an opportunity in Nashville. I'm just looking at the stats right now. He had 11 goals in 40 games in the shortened year, the year after the pandemic. And then he had 11 goals in 75 games. And this year he had 2 goals in 13 games. So I don't know if they ever gave him a top 6 role, and probably he didn't deserve that but they gave him an opportunity, and now he's got 4 goals in 7 games. And
it's just the name Kevin for no assets. That's my whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But Kevin, what did you think? I mean, in this day and age for assets, it's like, for a player like that. I
think one thing has changed, Dak, is GMs are starting to count on a little bit the fact that everybody's capped out. Yeah. They start to persuade themselves that, he'll get through because nobody's got any room. They won't add another contract. They want that.
Kevin, you've always told me this, and it's very, I think, very vitally important is until we see what they use that cap space for that they got for him, we don't know what they got for him.
Well, no, it is, but it's not a lot. You know what I mean?
Not a lot, but still.
So.
Well, it doesn't look good. And look,
I'm not saying it looks good, but
even in Buffalo, like with Casey Fitzgerald, same situation. They waived him. Florida picked him up. Like Florida needs defense.
This is the interesting thing about that situation, and I talked to Russ about this. Okay, so they waived Casey Fitzgerald. The reason that they did it was to bring up Luukkonen, who they had demoted on a paper transaction the day before. Right. So Fitzgerald gets claimed by Florida, and then what does Buffalo do? They waive I think it was Jack Quinn, who was waiver exempt,
right,
to bring Luukkonen up. Why wouldn't you do that before you gave up on the defenseman who you said that you wanted to keep? And then today they waive a waiver exempt Peyton Krebs down to Rochester to bring up Jack Quinn. It's like you could have done that and not lost an asset.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, if I had to guess, I'd guess when they talked about it, they said, he'll get through.
Yeah, I guess. But this is 2 situations in the last 3 weeks that guys didn't get through.
I'm really surprised about something too, though, that we all think, GMs are smart. They know what they're doing. They know the ins and outs of the CBA better than we do. But there have been times when I've been surprised when I've offered what I thought was a kind of creative solution to something, and someone told me, we never really thought about that. It's just honestly that it's there. It does happen. I mean, it's not saying that
And what we can't rule out, because we saw it last year. and I have no proof of this other than it was sort of puzzling when Alex Barboulay got waived by Tampa and got claimed by Seattle. And then a couple weeks later, he got waived by Seattle and got reclaimed by Tampa to get him down to Syracuse in the AHL. General managers will do other general managers a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge favor. And maybe Florida, maybe Bill Zito claimed Fitzgerald, and then a week later, Buffalo reclaims him.
I honestly don't know, but I do know that Adams and Zito are tight. They have made deals before, obviously. Because Reinhardt got there. Like they made that deal. So yeah, it's possible. I mean, I think that, and Adams has done a pretty good job in general. Like it's hard to.
I mean,
yes,
it was a mistake, I think, for Buffalo, but. You're not talking about a guy that was, going to be a long-term solution for your team or anything like that. I did want to ask Russ on this because I really am perplexed by this. And, I have said for all you older folks, I said I never could make a living as an NHL scout because I thought Tony Herkins was going to be unbelievable. But I don't get the whole Peyton Krebs thing. Like, I've watched him now and I've seen him. Like, I don't know why people think he's going to be so good. I mean, I just don't understand it. And now, they've sent him down again.
I can explain it. So in juniors, he was pretty fantastic. He had amazing speed. Right. He was a great passer. The vision was there. Everything was there. But he did have an Achilles injury. And I know I have defaulted where I've said, speed still looks good and whatever. Maybe his speed isn't what it was back then. It's possible. It's not like I clocked the guy. And so I haven't been able to notice. But the thing is, with Peyton Krebs, if he doesn't have that speed and he's not ahead of the pack, it's not like he's a strong guy. And it's not like, so he's a guy that goes to the net. He needs that speed to actually get past defenders and beat them to a spot. And I guess he's not doing that now because I've seen him in some games where he's looked okay, but I'm guessing that he needs to have that kind of speed, and now that he doesn't, he's going to have to change the way he plays.
Speed creates time, Russ. If you have speed, you create yourself more time. The hardest thing about making the adjustment from juniors to NHL is the time, right? The time you have to do things. You don't have time to do things. So if you're losing the speed and you're losing the amount of time already because you're in the NHL, that's a hard adjustment.
Like Karlsson, we knew there's a problem after the Achilles. He was an older guy, and with Krebs, I just didn't pick up on it, but I guess that's probably the issue.
But ironically, the worst thing that happened to the Buffalo Sabres was last Saturday when they beat Minnesota. All of a sudden, everybody around Buffalo was saying they're in the playoff race. They're only 4 points behind the Islanders, and they have 3 games in hand. Well, they've used up the 3 games in hand, and they didn't get a point out of all 3 of them.
That's what happens sometimes with games in hand.
And they're what's that?
They're still in the playoff race.
No, but they're
using the games in hand, but they're not in the playoff race.
They're a young team, and they're not a fully formed team. And any talk about them making the playoffs, I mean, it's tough. Fans are fans. They're going to do what they're going to do. But if that gets in the ear of the players, they're a young team, and I think that distracts them. Just go out and play your games. They're a talented team. They play an exciting brand of hockey. Just go out and play. But because now it's like I don't like after a week after losing 3 straight games that they should have won, probably 2 of them. I don't think they're in the playoff race. Their goaltending is not good enough. Their team defense is not good enough.
I mean, they're in the playoff race. Whether or not they can make it or not is not a question.
Right, but you think teams that are 10 points out are in the playoff race? Zach, I'm talking about realistically.
They're 4 points out, Mike, and that is realistic. I mean, so I have a question for you guys. If you guys don't have anything else major to talk right now, because I have
I got one thing I want to discuss.
Yeah, why don't you go first? Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to point out that I had a discussion with an NHL team official. I actually got into a little debate with him. Is because I think there is a chance that Karlsson could be moved, and he said there's not a chance. And he said that the 4 years is just too much. And I said, I think it could work. I mean, because if you think that Karlsson could be the impact defenseman that he is now, like for 5 and 7-5, and he goes, here's the problem that you don't seem to understand: the Sharks won't pay half his salary. Right. And I said, what? And he said, no. He said, let's put it this way. He said, I don't know how many people you talk to, but I talked to a lot of people around this league. I have yet to run into anyone who's interested in picking up 4 years at more than $7 million.
No, yeah, right.
So I don't know. I don't know where that leaves us, because I thought, I mean, if you're a contender, if you could get 5.75, well, that's still worth it.
I mean, he's in the top 10 NHL.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I just don't feel it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what he said, and this guy, I mean, he believed everything he told me. I mean, I've known him for years, 30 years as a matter of fact. So, and he said he has not talked to anybody who's even considering that.
The only thing that makes any sense regarding Karlsson would be to trade to a team that does not mind going into LTIR, because in that situation, like 2 years down the line, if his Achilles acts up or something else happens, and he goes on injured reserve, if they go into LTIR, that with most teams, that's money that you're throwing away. If it's a team that's a bottomless pit like the Rangers, where they print money, or the Leafs or the Canadians or somebody like that, they might be willing to roll the dice. Now, they're not going to give San Jose anything for him because they're taking the full financial hit, but I think it's plausible. I don't know how probable it is, but it's plausible.
I talked to GM about this too, Kevin, the other day, because I was curious whether or not it could be a trade for like a problem for a problem, not a problem, but a big salary for a big salary, and what he said to me is the same thing that your guy said, is that as of now, he said he added as of now, and San Jose sees him as a top 10 scorer. They're like, we're not going to take any of his money. We deserve to get the whole thing. We deserve to get what we want for him, but he really believes that's an as of now type situation, like that he thinks that will change once you get the deadline, because there'll be some good offers, and there'll be some really strong offers, and teams could go out there and throw multiple first round picks at them and stuff like that. There's something that could happen if they're willing to give up. If they're willing to take half the money, they could get really.
But who's going to give up multiples? And
nobody's giving up multiple first round picks.
That's probably an exaggeration on my part, but
I mean, honestly, it's like if say San Jose, say Mike Greer says, I want to trade Erik Karlsson, and everybody out there, sort of like what Pierre Dorian did with Matt Murray. I'm trading Erik Karlsson, and in the Dorian situation, he says, I'm trading Matt Murray, and the most I'm going to retain is 25%. I don't care what you say. That's it. You operate under that and basically they gave Murray away for nothing to the Leafs. Okay, so Erik Karlsson, you're 11-5. I'm not retaining one penny. That's
impossible. If they do that, they aren't going to move him. It's 100% impossible.
Right. Well, right. Exactly.
Even if you were to look at like a guy like Bobrovsky, it's straight up. Even for that, it's not going to happen.
But that makes no sense for them. It makes no sense for Sharks to take.
Of course not. But I'm just saying, even if you have kind of also around $11 million.
This is the exact reason Bobrovsky hasn't been moved in these last few years.
The only benefit in a Bobrovsky for Karlsson deal is one less year, and Bobrovsky's making 10 and Karlsson's making 11.5. So that's a saving of $14.5 million. But the problem is that Bobrovsky is a no move, and he's not going to want to go to San Jose.
That's the problem. Okay, this is not about Bobrovsky. This is not about them not being able to trade him at half his salary. Really
I don't know about that. I think even if he waived his no move, you would have very few suitors for Bobrovsky.
He set a record for wins last year in the NHL. Like
he's not.
You're not talking about.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. I mean, if he's a $5 million goalie, he's worth it. 100%.
There's at $5 million that would be a shot. What's he got left? 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
After this year. Yeah.
I think there's more than a shot, Kevin. I think say a Toronto has like Murray go down with an injury or something like that, or somebody else go down with a team that has Stanley Cup hopes.
Yeah, but the last thing Florida needs is dead money. At least they're getting something.
That's the other issue. I mean, the issue is, first of all, he won't accept a trade, and he has never been willing to accept trades. He wouldn't accept a trade from Columbus. He won't accept a trade from here. He's very big on the fact he has a no trade clause, I was told. And the other thing is, Florida is not a team that can eat $5 million.
Right.
Like San Jose could. San Jose is in a different financial situation than Florida is. Okay. They've got their
$5 million of dead money would be hurting them because they don't spend to the cap. And they've got enough problems. The one thing I wanted to bring up, Beck, is yesterday's Ranger game. They had a great comeback. And I'm not really going to talk about the comeback, although I would just say this. Watch the Adam Fox goal. And if you ever wonder why people talk about him and talk about him as a Norris guy all the time, it's because of a shot like he did in that game, just calm, cool, puts up a backhand and it goes in. This I just never seen a guy this calm on the ice. But the thing that happened in this game that you'll like is so Ottinger in the third period is having trouble with his mask, right?
Right, yeah.
It seems like the strap is gone. You see he reaches behind and he can't fix his mask, right? And with his other hand, he is trying to tell, I got to do it this side, the referee, hey, you got to stop play because my mask is not going to stay on. Referee ignores him. He takes his mask off. He gets a penalty.
Right.
Now, this is a situation I believe
where I hate that so much because I really do I think that
it's a safety issue.
I do, and I've seen goalies do it before, and I'm surprised he got a penalty. Like, he should not get it.
He gets a penalty now. Luckily, the Rangers didn't cash in on that. But the idea was, this is where I think now referees are just they need to reset themselves, because I don't know how you didn't see that. The guy was waving his hand frantically, and he was messing with the back of his mask.
Yeah, I mean, what can he do if it's mask? I mean, that's really I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen where a guy the bottom of the goalie pad will come out, with the one that ties to the skate. That's a problem that that comes out. You can't skate. You're going to step on it. I know because I've done that many times. It's an embarrassing move, but yeah, that's really lame. Really lame.
A couple quick things.
But real quick before that, Mike, I do want to address Fox for a second, because Fox, I agree with you, Russ. I mean, the only person I've seen that's that calm under pressure and has that sort of style to me is Mark Howe. I really feel like Fox and Mark Howe have a very similar game. And Mark Howe was the same way. Mark Howe was so smooth. He looked like he could play for it. He had played for it in his career. He could play for it. Fox could play for it. No question about it.
When I see Adam Fox, I think of Ray Bourque.
Yeah, I mean, the most poised player in NHL history is Nicholas Lidstrom. I swear he had a 58.
There you go.
He had a 58 pulse when he played, no matter what was going on. So,
I have a good idea of how Fox is. I was doing an interview with him once, one-on-one, but it's in a situation where there's ice and there's ice in the stick and whatever. And the whole time I'm talking to him, he's messing around with the puck. He's holding it on the stick. He's answering every question perfectly. I even screwed something up, and I said, "Oh, sorry, I know better." And he goes, "I don't care." And he could focus on both of those things at once without a problem and still give a great interview. He just has it.
Part of the great American future team. The future team, we're going to see play for America at some point against Canada. That's he's a big part of that.
Yeah.
A couple quick things. One, we got some criticism in the chat, Russ, about the Islanders scoring a bunch of goals. Okay, look at the last 4 games.
I know.
They lost to Edmonton 4-2, Calgary 4-1, Dallas 2-1, Minnesota 3-1. Who's not scoring goals, folks? That's the reason why.
Actually, it's getting dire there in the sense that the fans are starting to lose a little faith, because it's like, Sorokin's playing great. He's playing out of his mind.
Yeah,
and they can't score for him.
Right, they shouldn't be a borderline based on the goaltending and the defense that they have. They should not be a wild card team in the East, and they are, because they can't score goals. The other thing is this.
Their whole thing. Maybe respond to that for a second. Their whole thing is that they actually, like I said about the Islanders, they remind me of the old Devils. They are designed to play with a lead, and they're a team that if they get a lead on you, 1-goal, 2-goal lead, you're in trouble. Even a 1-goal lead, because they are so good at countering. They're so good at. That's when they actually score goals. The problem is they have not been scoring first, and that you're not scoring goals. If you're not scoring first for the Islanders, that changes everything, because their best game is playing with a lead. And when they have to come from
the Islanders were scoring enough earlier, but now they've fallen down they're in the 20s now in terms of ranking. They're still scoring over 3 goals a game, but scoring is up. So you got to score more often. But when they were at 14 and 15, they were winning games. That was fine. But now that they're in the 20s, which means they're in the lower third, that isn't enough. And when you go into a slump where you can't score for 4 or 5 games, one thing has changed about hockey this season. You got to score goals.
Yeah, you do.
In order to win.
It's a great point.
Because the scoring is up, and it's been a changing of the guard in terms of who's scoring the goals. Buffalo is scoring goals. Dallas, a team that we equate with defense and the inability to score, they're in the top 7 or 8. Colorado, a team that scores all the time, is 25th.
I know.
Scoring. And people say, oh, it's all about injuries. No, it's not. Like, everybody gets beat up with injuries. And yes, that has impacted it, but it shouldn't impact them enough to go to the 25th in the league. Like, there's only 7 teams.
Well, yeah, watching the game, Kevin, they're playing a weird style. Colorado is. Like,
yeah, I mean, I watched them last night get beat by Chicago.
Yeah.
After I covered the Red Wings game, and I was waiting there for some people to walk out to the parking lot, and I watched a period of that game, and they just couldn't get it going against the Blackhawks.
Like, the weird
thing
thing
is,
is
playing not to lose instead of playing to win right now. Like, they feel like that's what they're doing. Man.
What the Islanders have done to sort of try and supplement offense is, like, they got Hudson Fasching. Hudson Fasching is not going to score anything. Like, yesterday, he didn't even have a shot on goal. Ratu yesterday wasn't even a scratch, so I'm assuming they sent him down. They gave him 7 games, so they don't want to burn his ELC. Okay, whatever. But again, you need goal scoring to make the playoffs. Where are you getting it from? I mean, they may come up with a trade, but by the time they get the trade, they could be like 6-8 points out. Like, they're also counting on Anapellic to come back, but he's not really an offensive guy. He's a defensive defenseman, so he's not going to help
build around their defense.
The problem with that wild card situation, and the team that I'm covering, the Red Wings, are in the midst of all that.
Yeah,
there's too many teams in contention, so half of them are winning every night.
Right.
So it's really, really difficult to make up ground. So that even 4 points, 5 points, that's a pretty significant lead to overcome, because there's a bunch of teams that are winning every night, and unless you got to go on like a 9-1 or 8-0-2 or something like that to make any hay, because there's at least 1 or 2 in that group. They're going to be winning 6 and 7 games.
And the Penguins have 3 games in hand on them.
So, but the Penguins are stuck in there too. Like, I talked to an old scout the other night about his response to that, exactly what you said, Kevin, is like, there's so many people in the wild card that it becomes like fishing. Like when you're fishing and you have 1 crab, you can throw it in the bucket, the crab will stay in there. But if you got 20 crabs, no one will get out of the bucket.
That's right.
That's the truth. Like, you can't, like, and there's a bunch of crabs in that bucket, and no one's going to get out of that bucket. I thought that was a perfect analogy for that situation.
Now, the other situation, and then whatever you wanted to talk about, is the Vancouver Canucks. I have never seen a greater example of dysfunction in my life than this organization. And if it's not regarding signing JT Miller to a long-term deal, and the Horvat situation with him being the captain and having the year that he's having, and likely he's going to get traded before the deadline, to the lamest of lame ducks in Bruce Boudreau, who every day it seems like they're going to fire him. And what's happened in the last 72 hours is Rick Tockett's name has popped up as a potential coach to replace Boudreau, but I don't know if it's going to happen before the end of the year or not. But what happened with Quinn Hughes yesterday, where he has a media availability and he talks about Tanner Pearson, who was shut down for the rest of the year because he had to have another hand surgery. And apparently the feeling in Vancouver, the feeling amongst the team, is that the team's medical staff screwed up what was going on with Pearson, to the point that he had to have another surgery, another corrective surgery. He's out for the year, and he may have to have another one. So, I mean, you're talking about 3 or 4 surgeries on a hand injury. And most of the time, if it's a broken metacarpal or something like that, or even just a broken finger, it's a 5-6 week injury, and he's out for the season. So, I mean, Kev, this organization from the ownership on down has been just really in chaos, and I don't see it changing. It just keeps going.
Yeah, it's messy. It really has been. With JT Miller as well. All of a sudden now people are pointing fingers at him as being a problem. It almost feels like it really is in need of a reset. And they may get that. One thing that does occur when you get rid of a captain or a leadership group, which seems like is going to happen with Bo Horvat, is you have a complete kind of reset. We saw that in Minnesota, and there it was done on purpose, where they wanted, Zach Parise and Suter out of there because they wanted to change the culture of the team, and maybe that's what we need in Although I don't think it's Bo Horvat's fault, to be honest
No.
with you.
But they may lose a GM because 2 days ago Jim Rutherford says he misses the Penguins. So I mean,
yeah,
that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
I mean, Rutherford, if anybody can figure out his way out of this, it'll be Rutherford.
I don't know. He might retire.
Well, I think he's
I'll give you one scenario
that he might be done there.
I'll give you one scenario, Russ, because I've heard this many a times over the last few years. The one job that Jim Rutherford would love to have, but he's never had the opportunity to have, is GM of the Maple Leafs. And if Dubas gets fired they don't renew his contract, and he's president in Vancouver, that could be someplace where he goes. I don't know if the Leafs would be interested.
Is he president or president and GM?
No, GM as GM.
No. But what is his current title now with being there?
In Vancouver, he's president and I think
that's president.
Yeah, he's president.
Okay, so he can move then.
Yeah, Alvin is the GM.
Okay.
Right, and I mean, as a media person, I am all for that, Mike. Put that guy in Toronto. That would be so much fun because there's so many things, so many possibilities, so many cool trades. Yeah, I'm all for it. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot more to that. They have set a record. I think I saw the other day for the first 35 games or 40 games, wherever they are right now, for blowing a lead more than any other team has blown a lead in that amount of games. Which is a weird record to have, but they've blown like 20 games or something like that. 20 games, 20 times they've been ahead and they've lost. Or some ridiculous number. It's absolutely absurd. And that is what, that speaks to a lot of things. There's a lot of different things. If you're a team that blows leads, first of all, it means you have talent to get out to the lead, but it also means that, you don't have the work ethic to hold the lead. That's what I see it as. Holding a lead takes more work than getting a lead, I think. It's more work as a 5-man unit. If you get the lead, but then the commitment for everybody to play defense to hold a lead.
That's harder. Yeah, I agree with you.
That's a work ethic thing. And that you usually end up pointing at the coach, right? Which is, I do think what Kevin says is more accurate in terms of the fact that I think there's two, I've heard this, that there's two groups in that. There's two groups in that locker room right now.
You also got to remember, Eck, is that they've been without Demko for 5 weeks. Demko's last year, they've been playing Spencer Martin as their number one. That's a big contributing factor to their lack of success. Not to attack Spencer Martin, but Spencer Martin is a backup or 4A goaltender. He's not a starter in the NHL, and they've been forced because of injury to play him. So that's a big. But honestly, at this point, I think they need to do a reset, Kev. And with the specter of a Vancouver native and Connor Bedard in the draft, it would make sense for them to do like a half-season tank like Toronto did in 2015. I just don't know if the Aquilinis will ever do it. They just seem to not want to do anything that makes sense when it comes to resetting or rebuilding.
Yeah. Where are they right now in the Bedard?
I believe they're like
seventh. They're seventh from the bottom.
Seventh from the bottom.
Yeah. Well, they're never going to get far enough down to get anything further than
remember they blew 20 leads.
Yeah.
So they're going to be
if you're in and you got a taste, that's all you can kind of ask for.
Maybe Arizona could swap spots with them, but that's probably the best they can hope for.
I don't. Maybe someone out there in the chat room is more of an NBA fan than I am, but I ran into another reporter last night at the game, and he was just talking about the NBA situation, Detroit Pistons, and which they share an arena with the Red Wings. And we were talking about the fact they're just a horrible team this year. And I asked what their chances were of getting someone good. And apparently there's someone in the NBA that's supposed to be unbelievable, someone from France who's just phenomenal. And every team covets him. It's sort of like a Bedard situation. And I said, well, what are the chances? And he said, well, if they finish in the bottom three, it's 18%. And I thought 18%, like that's not even as good as our 25. Like that's really absurd. What do you think
because tanking is so much easier in the NBA. They have to stop it.
I mean, and there's only three teams, get that. Three teams get 18%. It's the bottom three. So I mean, to me, that just seems even worse than this situation.
Worse than the NHL.
You guys remember my theory a long time ago that I threw out there, which I always thought this is a fun thing to talk about. It never happened, but I always thought it would be fun to pick a spot in the season and say, okay, say for the All-Star game, take the All-Star game, for example. We're say February 1st, or the trade deadline. Say from the trade, let's take the trade deadline, which is even going later. From the trade deadline on, the top pick goes to the best record that doesn't make the playoffs. And then you give a chance to you push everybody.
But you're punishing teams for trading assets they're going to lose for nothing at the deadline. You cannot do. See, that's the thing. There's a lot of people out there that have an abhorrence to teams tanking or teams rebuilding, and I think it's a necessity for franchise building. I have no problem with it. I mean, right now in the NBA, Kevin, Detroit is 12-33. The worst team is Houston with 10 wins and Charlotte with 11 wins. Those organizations have nothing to root for other than going for.
No, that's right. Yeah, people are already talking in Detroit about, their chances. And to be honest, this was not a set upon idea to tank. It turned out to be a bad team.
Yeah, this is a tough subject though, because
a couple times, I don't know, but it's just
this is a tough subject because I could almost take your stance too, because while what Mike's saying might be true, it hasn't helped the Leafs get out of the first round of the playoffs. It hasn't. And with the 76ers going through the process, they've never made it to the finals.
Right.
Yeah, but
Russ,
this is important that we bring this up. Because we've been talking about this with my colleagues about with regard again to the Red Wings of a rebuild. Like, when do you say, okay, the rebuild has been successful? Like, a lot of people seem to assume you got to win it all, but I don't think that's
you don't have to win it all.
I think it's when you're considered a legitimate contender.
Yes.
Like the Maple Leafs rebuild has been an overwhelming success.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Overwhelming success, even though that they haven't won. Now, granted, that's a different layer of it that has to be considered. But that's an overwhelming success, in my opinion. The Blackhawks, their rebuild was completed not when they won in 2010, but when they were a contender the season before, in my opinion. So I think that's the way you've got to look at it. Like, the Red Wings are still in their rebuild because no one's looking at them going, well, they've arrived.
The only thing, Kev, I get what you're saying, and it's true that you could say, hey, the Leafs are sort of a cup contender, but they haven't been able to get out of the first round. So really,
you're talking more now like a fan than I think.
I know, but that's not. But you're not a cup contender if you can't get out of the first round.
Yeah, but you're facing Tampa Bay every first round.
That's
not really true. Like, we knew Tampa Bay Lightning was a cup contender even when they got hammered by Columbus. It's not like we said, well, that team's not.
We know they're a cup contender, Kevin, but I agree with Russ that at some point their rebuild is not a success if they can't win the playoff round.
How about changing the playoff format to a conference format?
No, you can't do that, Mike.
Why? Why not?
Because if you're a cup contender, you got to be able to beat a first round team, no matter who it is.
Well, I agree, but there's circumstances. You
might change divisions, and that division might get Connor Bedard, and then you'll be bitching about Connor Bedard. Like, you just don't know how it's going to work.
Okay, in the last 4 playoffs, the Leafs have faced the team that ended up winning the Eastern Conference or ending up in the Stanley Cup final 3 of 4 years.
Oh, I know.
Boston, Montreal, Tampa. The only one that they lost to that didn't was Columbus. So I'm sorry. The Atlantic Division, the divisional playoff format in the NHL is inherently unfair. You'd ask any 2-3 matchup in this league. If you structured it 1 through 8 like it was with the 2 division winners at the top, it's more fair, and it still preserves the potential of a divisional matchup. The NHL just won't simply do it, and I don't understand why.
Well, let me just say this, because I don't think anybody, and it's really interesting because Derek Lalonde knows all about he's the coach of the Red Wings, for those who don't know. He knows all about the Maple Leafs because he was the assistant coach and really kind of the scheming assistant coach. Like, he prepared to deal with teams. So he knows all about them. And the point that he made in discussing the most recent Red Wings, victory over them is that they're not the same team they were 3 years ago. Like he said they're really committed to defense. Like he said, when you watch them play, he says, basically saying, look, we've broken down their film. We know everything about them, and they're not playing wide open anymore. So they've tried to adjust as well. And my point I wanted to make is nobody in the league says, oh man, the Maple Leafs didn't do it right. They haven't figured out how to win in the playoffs. I think they see it as kind of bad luck that they've had difficulty and they've had good teams right in front of them. I mean, you see that in all sports where sometimes through fate, you end up in the same division with the Yankees when they were winning. The teams that had to deal with Montreal in the 1970s, within their division. So it is a different element. I mean, you guys are both right in terms of, it's your job to figure out how to get beyond that. But nobody is saying that the Maple Leafs are total failure. Right. They say they build a really, really nice team.
They'll say it if they don't do it this year. They will.
Well, the fans will. But nobody in the league, nobody around the league is looking at the Maple Leafs and saying, Dubas is an idiot.
It's at the point now where if they win a first round matchup, that in Toronto would be considered almost akin to them winning a Stanley Cup because they haven't won a first round matchup in 18
years. But let me
just
ask you this, Mike. Who in the last couple of years were the Leafs supposed to beat that would have been a great matchup for them that Tampa beat or somebody else beat that you said, oh, they would have beaten that?
They were favored against Columbus. And they didn't win that series, and they were favored against,
and they were leading in the Tampa series,
and they were leading in the Tampa series. But I never thought that they were going to win that series because Tampa is Tampa. But Montreal was the worst.
But I mean, after that, after the first round, they get out of the first round. Right. Who are they going to beat?
Well, I mean, I don't even know who they were going to match up. I mean,
if
they had beaten Montreal, they would have beaten Winnipeg in the second round.
Yeah, let's just ask this: would they have had no chance to beat Colorado? I think they would have had a chance.
It would have been great. I don't think
that Tampa series, like I said last year, they played. I think their best playoff series they've played in a very long time against Tampa last year. I think that was as close as it could come. And I said that's why I said to me they could have played Tampa in the conference final and lost too. I mean, it could have been either way.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was beating Colorado.
But because of the playoff format, they have to play them in the first round. It's like the Bills playing Kansas City in the wild card round. That's what it's like.
Right, but you know what, Mike? I've also been on the side of that as a fan.
Right.
And if your team can beat that team in the first round, then they sometimes have enough confidence to win it all. That's
right.
How
And Russ, I know that you've been through that because like the Rangers played the Islanders in the 80s in the first round a lot. And it doesn't make it less unfair. I mean, there is a fairer system to preserve, to have the conference format rather than the divisional format.
There is no fair system. There is no fair system.
Well, it is a fairer system.
There is no fairer system, Mike.
What do you mean there's no fairer system?
The most fair system we ever had was like 1978 or whatever when we had.
Don't tell me 1 versus 16 was fair.
So that was the fair system, though, Mike, right? That's the fairest system. We all agree that that's the fairest system.
Best of 3 first round and 1 through 6. Yeah, no, I don't think that was fair at all.
There is no fairer system because every couple of years, more superstars and big stars are added into this league, and you don't know if they're coming into the division that the team you're covering or the team you're rooting for is going to be going up against.
Think about this for a second. Ready? Mike, you have the option right now. But you have to keep this option. Whatever you pick, I'm going to give you this choice. Whatever you pick, the Maple Leafs have to stay there for the next 5 to 10 years. We'll say 10 years. Do you want them in this division or the Metro division? You pick. Where would you rather have them in the Metro? Would you rather have them in the division they're in now or in the Metro division for the next 5 to 10 years?
I'd rather have them in the Metro division.
Really?
Yes.
I'm surprised you would say that. Okay.
With Jack Hughes and the Rangers, Lafreniere and Sorokin.
The only team that scares me in the Metro division is the Rangers with Shesterkin and Carolina still doesn't have a goaltender. Pittsburgh is getting old. New Jersey, I think they have goaltending questions. They're in the Atlantic. You have Boston. They're getting old, but they're still great. Tampa Bay. I mean, you tell me Tampa Bay is going to get old next year? No. They're going to be good for the only difference.
I think the Metro is heading more up than the Atlantic is.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Look at Buffalo.
It's close.
The Red Wings are on the time. But the one thing about Maple Leafs is, and that we don't want to lose sight of, because this is a statistic-oriented league. The Maple Leafs are third in goals against average. They're a top 10 scoring team. They're a top 5 power play team. Their analytics are up in the top 5 or 6. This is a very, very, very good hockey team. So their rebuild has been successful. Now, and there's another element to that you two bring up, which is they haven't got out of the first round of the playoffs. But I'm not so sure that is a issue that is, there has to be some luck involved in that too. It's like, who do you go up against? What's your draw? All those kinds of things. Some of those things are out of your control. Now you got to solve them. That's part of all that. But the only point I was making when we started all this is it's clear that the Maple Leafs rebuild has been successful, highly successful.
If you said it this way, Kevin, if you said build a great team, I'm with you. But if you say the rebuild has been successful, I'm not there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely nuts, and it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have arguably a top 3 or 4. They have 2 of the top 10 forwards in this league right now. They're a better defensive team. Their blue line is better. Their goaltending is better than it's been since they started the rebuild in 2015. I think they're a success story. The only place that they haven't had success is where it counts, which is the postseason.
Do it, guys. We got to go. But yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I'm with you 100%. And listen, Mike. I could bring up a podcast right now where we argued the exact opposite way, because I was the one telling you how good Toronto was, and you're like, they're terrible. They can't win. So I was hoping that, man.
He's right on that, Mike. You are like that, but 25% of the league's teams lose a first round series.
That's the case. It's the reality, and there's a great deal of luck involved.
And half the teams don't even get into the first round. Yeah. So,
at the end of the day,
I think there's two measures.
They could become the Buffalo Bills of the NHL. Throw that out there, Mike, for you. Okay. All
right, I got to run, guys. We'll see you later.
See you later.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Without the buzz, it's just hockey, and I'm sure Mike's gonna kill me when I get off when we close. But enjoy your weekend, everyone. Have a good time. See you then.